Coming up next on Arizona Horizon, we'll hear about a community college course designed to help American Indians express themselves through film. And Jana Mummersbach talks about her new book, a historical novel based on the life of a woman wrongly accused and lynched for cattle rustling. Those stories next on Arizona Horizon.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of Eight, members of your Arizona PBS station. Thank you.
Good evening and welcome to Arizona Horizon. I'm Ted Simons. Native Documentaries for Social Change is a curriculum taught at Mesa Community College that helps American Indian students use filmmaking to communicate their heritage and history. Eddie Webb developed the curriculum. He joins us now to talk about the program. Good to see you. Thanks for joining us here.
Thank you for having me.
The Native Documentaries for Social Change. What exactly are we talking about?
Well, it's a progression of our curriculum, our written curriculum that we've had, our competencies from English 101 and 102. And so I had actually gone back to film school at Scottsdale Community College as a teacher myself. And I was exposed to documentary filmmaking there. And so I just started building this curriculum for our Native students of how to make the language come alive, right? So in the past, I was seeing these great research papers by individual students, but I'm the only one seeing them. And so by using this technology, we can reach a larger base, and also the skill set that comes along with filmmaking.
So basically, these films communicate heritage and communicate history, correct?
Yeah. Well, we pick a theme. The students actually pick a theme. We have a process, Ted, that follows our competencies in rhetoric, right? So we have to have an objective thesis. We have to have case studies. We have to integrate all of that research into a solution or a conclusion, right? And so answer all of those premise. And so we workshop with the students and they pick the topic, and that's what's been pretty cool about this whole experience. Is our first one that we did was about assimilation through boarding schools. And that was the theme. The one that we're currently working on that we've been shooting is native language preservation. Because as the country knows, as the language goes, the culture goes.
Indeed, and I notice in looking over this that you want these films, these documentaries, these projects to promote social consciousness. What exactly does that mean?
Well, for hundreds of years, it's been really the colonialist story of America, the land, the environment, as well as the people. And so with these, with this technology of filmmaking, tribes can actually exercise self-determination, sovereignty, and not for the first time, but we're at the beginning of an era where young people can take multimedia technologies and tell their stories. And just by doing that is the shift in the culture and in society, where you're not having other people tell you about your culture. You're telling.
Indeed. We've talked about that a number of times on this program. The idea of history is whoever's telling it. Right. And right now we're getting that history and heritage from these American Indian students. It's interesting because I know there's a very strong oral tradition in Native American culture that comes through pretty strong in these documentaries, I would imagine.
Oh yes. I mean, I think the people that they sort of bridge the gap too between traditional people and more progressive populations, right? But the idea is that they are still bridging the communication through storytelling, right? It's the stories. I don't know, Leslie Silko had written in her book Ceremony that stories are all we have. It's what heals us, it's what keeps us healthy, it's the way we interpret. And so our young people, they're free to explore their own stories.
From what you've seen now, and again, this is part of English 101, 102, this is part of the curricula there at Mesa Community College. How do you see the difference now between the student who writes X, Y, and Z and now can show and tell X, Y, and Z?
Well, I think it's my responsibility as an instructor, right, to stay current on a lot of these technologies, because this is the language that our young people are using. Facebook, all of these multimedia technologies are just common tools for them. So I've been very encouraged by, the students when they get into the classroom and they see the curriculum, they just, they come alive. And the last one that we did, we actually filmed them actually writing the traditional paper, right? And then cut away to us being out on the reservation, interviewing elders, interviewing, people that preserve the language, the culture. So instead of it just being a thesis statement, in the text, then we do that part, but then we cut away, to bring it alive.
Indeed.
Right? And they love it.
Does it come alive? I mean, are you reading, again, you're reading this particular story, but the minute that story gets onto videotape or digital or whatever they're using these days, you're seeing a different story?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think the impact of the story is better for the audience, right? And isn't that what we teach that, right? That's the first question you ask. Who is your audience, right? And then we ask them in writing to show more than tell, right? And so here we do that. All of those principles just line up perfect.
What kind of reaction are you getting from the students?
Positive, all positive. It's also a great team building exercise. So I put, we just we name our own production company. We called it RAD Film Productions. We make our own T-shirts. So there's a business aspect to the writing as well. So they formed our own company, and then we just break them into production teams. And we wait a couple weeks while we're doing the writing so people get a feel for the equipment. We're shooting DSLR cameras, we're using Zoom recorders, LED lighting. So we have all the tools to play with, and people just kind of find their way, to whatever group. So it brings community together. The students are working together. We work on a big screen through Google Docs. So we're writing collaboratively, and it's amazing.
And now, what kind of reaction are you getting from other instructors?
Positive, I think at the beginning it's a lot, right? It's a lot to comprehend in terms of how do you make a sentence, come alive, right? We're okay with static images, PowerPoints, right? But now all I'm doing is introducing motion and audio, which it has to be edited, right? So there's another component to the curriculum too, right? We're using all of the Premiere, I don't know if can I say products on it.
Oh, sure, yeah.
But so we're using all these other technologies as well to get the final product. So I think instructors have been, at least in my department, extremely supportive.
Last question on this. We talked about obviously what kids are learning, but there's also leadership, I would imagine, identity, family bonds, the whole 9 yards. Yes. That has to be included here.
All of that. And what's really exciting about it is to watch the natural progression of the classroom, right? So students they find their way. In a week, 5-6 days, I know who's going to be the producer, who's going to be the director, who wants to get behind the camera.
Yeah.
I mean, people they just find their way. I had 2 students last summer, and they were best buddies, but they were fascinated by lighting a scene. Right?
Yeah.
Rembrandt.
Yeah.
And I showed them Rembrandt, and that's all they wanted to do, and it was amazing. And we have our producer, we have, and so they find their way into it. Yeah.
Well, congratulations on this. It sounds really interesting, and it sounds like you're getting good work done. It must be very satisfying. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Ted.
Author Jana Boomersbach is out with a new book. This one is a novel, and it's based on the life of Ella Watson, a woman lynched for cattle rustling in the Wyoming Territory in 1889. But Ella Watson was no cattle rustler. Her only mistake was getting on the wrong side of powerful cattlemen over land and water rights. On the 125th anniversary of the lynching, Ella Watson's story gets another look by local writer Jana Boomersbach in the novel Cattle Kate. Joining us now is Jana. Good to see you again.
Good
I can
to
just
see
call
you,
you
Ted.
Jan. I think everyone knows who you are by that first name. Who was Cattle Kate?
There never was a Cattle Kate. Cattle Kate was a fictitious person created by the cattlemen and the Cheyenne daily newspapers to cover up for a horrible crime. No woman had ever been lynched in the nation as a cattle rustler, and here they had lynched a woman and her husband. But because there was a woman lynched, they had to figure out some way to make her so detestable that nobody would care that they had actually killed a woman. And so they created the legend of Cattle Kate, that she was a dirty rustler and a filthy whore, and that this was rangeland justice, and she deserved it, and she was terrible, and she was the queen of the Sweetwater, and had this huge range of rustling, all of which was fictitious. But for a century, history bought that story.
History bought the story because apparently, not long after this incident happened, the media, such as it was back in those days, very much in line with the power brokers.
Very much in line with the power brokers. The only information that ever came out of the territory, this is Wyoming Territory, 1889. Okay, the only information that ever came out of the territories came from the major dailies in the big city. And in this case, it was Cheyenne, and it was the two major dailies there. And that's what the Associated Press and UPI picked up on and ran stories around the nation and around the world. So the stories that these papers were feeding them were the only version of the story they ever got. Now, interestingly, we've discovered that all of the frontier papers in the smaller towns were trying to tell the true story, but nobody was paying attention to them. So the people in those little towns, they knew what was going on, but they had no power to do anything. Plus, the people who had been involved in this lynching, the witnesses and the people who were Ella and Jim's friends, they either died, were murdered, or disappeared. And so people learned very quickly, let's not get our feet in. We don't have a dog in this fight. We got to stay out of this thing.
Okay, so who was Ella Watson, not Cattle Kate?
Not Cattle Kate. And that was the thing that I was after, is who was this woman who was branded this way? And her name was Ella Watson. She was 29. She was a homesteader, one of the few female homesteaders in any of the territories in 1889. She had a homestead claim, a legitimate claim of 160 acres along a little creek. She wanted to be a citizen. She had applied for citizenship because she was Canadian born. She had originally immigrated to Kansas with her family and then came west by herself. And that was another clue about what kind of woman this was, because most women went west with their husbands, their fathers, or their brothers. She went west by herself and created her own life. Worked for a while at a major hotel in little Rawlins, Wyoming Territory. Then met this Jim Averill man who she would eventually marry, and got the claim. He had a claim next to hers. She got a branding iron by hook and crook, because the cattleman who controlled the branding irons didn't want her to have one, but she figured out a way to get one. She had cattle that she had bought and that she was keeping in a corral. She was trying to be a citizen. She was raising a young boy. She really was creating a life. And that's the woman that I discovered that I found so amazing. At first I thought I was just going to write about a great injustice, but I wasn't writing about an injustice. I was writing about a true life woman who was one of those strong Western pioneer women that history has basically ignored.
Now, she was a strong Western pioneering woman who got these 160 acres,
Right.
and again, she wasn't married, so they could get the 160 acres for him and then combine them when they married, correct?
Well, after they were proved up. If they married, it would still go to the man. The way the laws were written, it was the head of household could have the claim. So if she married this man publicly,
Yes.
then he would take the land. It would be his land. And she wanted her own land. So they went away and got secretly married, but didn't tell anybody. They thought,
Oh,
well,
I see,
after
I
we're all
see.
proved up, after
Okay.
5 years, when this is my legal land, then we can tell people that we're married.
But that land is the sticking point here as far
land
as
is
this.
the sticking
Talk to
point.
me about who this A.J. Bothwell was.
A.J. Bothwell was the neighbor next door. He was the guy he thought he was the king of the Sweetwater Valley. He thought he was just the best guy in the world. He could do whatever he wanted to do. I mean, this guy was notorious for breaking the law at any given time. I mean, he would put up fences where there couldn't be fences. He would claim land that he had no right to. I mean, he just thought he owned the world. And when little Ella puts her little claim down there on Horse Creek, That was land that he had used as a pasture land, and in fact, it was the land that he used to get to the creek. So all of a sudden, she and her husband own the rights to the creek, and this guy is like getting like, where's my water coming from? I need that water, I need that water. So he tries to scare them out, he tries to burn them out, he tries to romance her out of her land. He tries to be sweet and said, listen, honey, why don't I just pay off I'll buy the land outright for you, and then you can pay me back. And he tried every scam he could think of, and when he couldn't find any scams to get her off the land, he murdered her.
Well, okay, he murders her, but how does he justify that? I imagine obviously there was a story that she rustled cattle. How did they work that out?
They just declared it. They said, well, she's a cattle rustler, and we need to take care of these rustlers because, boy, we're getting rustled to death. This whole, we can't, the judges won't convict people who are rustlers, and those homesteaders are all moving in. And the thing was that the cattlemen were making up these incredible rustling stories because the cattle industry was dying, and they were losing lots of money, and their investors back east, they wanted to know why they were losing money. Well, we're being rustled to death. So a lot of what their claim of the great rustling of the Western cattle was fictitious itself. But they used that excuse that she was a rustler. They hated the homesteaders. This was a time when the open range of the cattlemen is disappearing, and the homesteaders are moving in with their little plots of land, right? And breaking up the big expanses of land that they needed for their cattle to run all over the place and eat free, right? So that whole conflict. Ella and Jim were right in the middle of that whole conflict.
And they wind up lynched, and we wind up hearing the story from the cattleman's side for a long
Only from that
time.
side.
So, what happened to that land? Did Bothwell get it?
Yes.
So the bad guy won?
Yes. The bad guy won. He stayed in that valley for the next 26 years. He took over their property. He used Ella's house that she had built as his ice house. He became the postmaster instead of the man he had just lynched, who was the postmaster at a little roadhouse. He took over that job. And he never once ever showed any remorse for what had happened. There were 6 lynchers, and most of the other ones moved away because they were so chagrined at how the public treated them, because they were absolutely shunned, and the public reacted to these murders by calling them names and being mean and trying to disgrace them. Except him, he didn't care any of that. He just carried on his own way.
Okay, so you're doing research on this. You're obviously up in Wyoming for at least a spell here. How do they look at this story now in Wyoming? And are there Bothwells still roaming the earth who aren't too happy about you resurrecting the story?
Well, Bothwell himself would eventually die in L.A., and I don't know if there's any Bothwells around, but there are people around in that valley who, in fact, were part of this whole lynching situation, and they don't like this story at all. They would like to believe that she really was a rustler and that she really was a bad person and that there was some justification. But virtually every historian who's now looked at this case, and there are plenty from Wyoming itself, and that's where you look. You look to the people who really understand that culture. You look at people who live there, who have a stake there. They do have a dog in this fight.
Yes.
They want to know what really happened. And there are still those in Wyoming who want to believe that Ella Watson was a terrible woman and she deserved what she got, but almost every historian there that living now is saying to them, this was a total horrible miscarriage of justice.
Hearing the story, I think of Incident at Owl Creek Bridge. I think of Michael Cimino's film, that big bomb that these peak characters were in. The story has been out there in so many different ways. You now have taken the story and written it as a novel. Why a novel?
Because I wanted Ella to tell her story. I mean, the way this whole thing happened is I had known about this story because I write for True West magazine, as you know. And so I had been writing about women of the West, and one of the profiles I did when I realized that there were some problems with the way this history had told the story was about Ella Watson. And ever since then, I have been wanting to know more and more and more about it. And I was reading a historical novel on my mother's patio in 2009, and all of a sudden I thought I heard the words, "I never thought I'd die like that." And I went, oh my God, that's what Ella would have said.
Yeah.
I thought, she needs to tell this story. This needs to be, she's the person that they erased. This is a personality. This is the person, the human blood person that was erased. She needs to be able to stand up straight and tall and tell her story, what happened to her. So it seemed to me that doing it as a historical novel would give me a chance to bring life and breath to this legend.
So, and you've written books, obviously. When you were with Judd, you've written the nonfiction books. Now you've got this novel. Compare and contrast.
I love the historical novel.
Do ya?
I do, because it satisfies my journalistic credentials for all the research. And what I did in this book is that this is really in 3 parts. The first part, Ella tells her story. Second part is the third person as you see how they create the legend. And the third part is the facts of the matter, where every chapter there's endnotes that tell you what happened, the real story, and chapter and verse of where I got information from. So you can track the accuracy and the historical truth of this whole story. So that part of my journalistic thing is satisfied with that, but being able to bring breath and life to these characters so that you're not just reading facts and figures, but you're letting these people become personalities, and you deduce what you can from the evidence you can find.
And yet, and this is my last question here, as far, you know, a lot of novel writers, fiction writers will say, the character surprised me. The character's doing things I didn't expect. How can you have her surprise you? You know what's going to happen.
You know what's going to happen. And from the very beginning of the book, you know what's going to happen. You know that this woman is going to be lynched. And in fact, the book starts off as she has a rope around her neck, right? And, and she starts talking about, well, this can't be happening. How can I be hanged? This is wrong, right? And then you go through her life. The thing that was so amazing, I love the line when you said 125 years of her anniversary of her murder, now we get to hear her story. Well, I wrote a sentence like that in a promotion piece I did, and then I put period, I was going to be done. And then my fingers typed, and if Ella could, she would have said, it's about time.
Well, it is about time. Great effort. Congratulations on this, and thank you so much for stopping by. We appreciate it. And that is it for now. I'm Ted Simons. Thank you so much for joining us. You have a great evening.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of 8, members of your Arizona PBS station. Thank you.